So now that we've talked about whole and part, we know the difference between what makes up a whole, which is the entire thing, versus a part, which is only a slice or a piece of it. Now, we used a pepperoni pizza earlier to talk about whole and part. Now, we're going to move on and talk about fractions. And the reason we had to know about whole and part is it is what we need to have a good understanding of before we can actually begin to really understand what does it mean by a fraction. Okay, so fraction is a part of the whole. So you can see here I have a Lego guy, and this first fraction that we're going to be talking about is called halves. Now you might see it written like this, which is a 1 over 2, or if I was to write it out, if I was to write the word out, we could say half, or you might actually see it called halves as well. Okay, so any of these combinations, they all mean the same exact thing. 1 over 2 means half, the word half means half, and then the last word halves means half as well. Okay, so all of these combinations mean halves, and I'm going to show you what does a half actually look like. Now I'm going to use this Lego guy as an example. If we talk about half, you can see the bottom number over here on this fraction that I wrote is the number 2. That's going to be important. We'll talk about that more as we get going with fractions. The bottom number is always going to tell you how many pieces you're going to have of the whole. Okay, so this means with the number 2, that means that this Lego guy, you can see we have one Lego guy, but I'm going to split this Lego guy into the number 2. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work some magic here. Let's just say I'm going to rub my eraser over the top of them and perform some magic, and then I'm going to rip them apart. Okay, so we'll go pull them apart. Perfect. So you can see here I've pulled my Lego guy into this number over here, which is 2. So I've got my Lego guy into 2 separate pieces. So now I could say that this Lego guy is in half. I cut him in half, or we could say this is an example of halves. Now in order for it to be halves, both pieces need to be the same exact size. If we put those 2 pieces back together, we end up making one Lego guy. So this is the whole, which is right here. So my Lego guy is whole. If I again work some magic, pull them apart, there is our 2 pieces, which would be halves. So again, big thing to understand about halves, okay, is that it's 2 pieces that are the exact same size. Okay, so again, halves, it has to be a total of 2 pieces. They have to be the exact same size. So let's look at another example of a Lego guy. So same Lego guy, I'm going to work magic again and pull them apart, and I want you to think in your head, is it an example of halves? So let me again rub my eraser over and then take and work my magic and go and pull them apart. Okay, so you can see now, again, I have 2 pieces, just like we said, if halves has to have 2 pieces. So I have 2 pieces for my fraction of half. But what is the problem with this? Can you tell me or think in your head, what do you think is wrong with this example? Okay, so what would be wrong with this example? The problem with this example is that they are not the exact same. Remember, in order for it to be halves, those 2 pieces must be the same. So you can see as I rip this Lego guy apart, both pieces would be the exact same. Whereas in this example, you can see this side over here, my Lego guy is a lot bigger than this little piece over here that I have. I just have his arm and part of his cape, where over here I have both legs, his head, his other arm, and the rest of his cape. So this, even though I have 2 pieces, is not an example of halves, simply because they are not both the exact same size. Now, this was an example with a Lego guy. Now let's see what this looks like with an actual shape. Okay, so I have a square here, and then I have my red line that's going to divide this square and show halves. Now, if I was to place this red line right here, this is an example of 2 pieces. So you can see here I have 1, 2 pieces. The problem is that those pieces are not the same exact size. So this would not be an example of halves, because remember, you have to have 2 pieces, but they have to be the same exact size. In order for it to make it halves, this would need to be pretty close to the middle to show 2 of the same size pieces. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'm going to write the number 1 and I'm going to write the number 2 to show you that we have two pieces. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to snap a picture of this so we can use it as an example here in a second. So I'm going to we snap that picture. Okay, so we're going to use this picture in a second to show you there's different ways to make halves. So there was example number 1. There's actually another way to make halves, and that would be to actually take and turn this. If we were to cut this sideways now, we could make halves like this. Now again, you can see that I have to put this red line in a place where both pieces of my square will be the same size. So if I put this up here, not going to work because this top piece that I just made is not the same size as the bottom. So let me move this down a little bit. Okay, so there I'm going to write a 1 again on top and a 2 on the bottom, and we're going to take a picture of this again to show you that, hey, guess what? This is another example of halves that we can use when we're talking about the fraction half. Okay, so we'll put this up here for us to use as another example. And now we're going to talk about the last way. So there's actually a total of 3 different ways that you can make halves. This last one is usually a tricky one that a lot of us don't ever think about, and it only works if it's a square. Okay, so we can actually cut this diagonally, which means from the top corner to the bottom corner that's opposite each other. So this line's kind of going sideways. Okay, so this would be an example of halves because both pieces, believe it or not, would end up being the exact same. If I cut this line, this red line down the middle with scissors, both of those pieces would be the same. So again, let's take this picture here. We'll snap this picture here so we can use it for an example. And actually, I might have lied because we could, even though it would be almost the exact same, we could take, let me move this stuff out of the way, we could take this red line and we could actually make it go diagonal the other way. So we could start down here and go up to the top corner this way, and that would be another way to make halves. The one thing is that it's almost the exact same because we're going diagonal, so it does look a little bit different than the ones that we've talked about, but it is the exact same as some of the others as making it diagonal. So let's get rid of this part here now so that we can just look at the ways that we made halves. Okay, so all of these squares that we just made are examples of halves because all of them have how many pieces? How many pieces are on each of these? 2 would be the correct answer. Okay, so 2 pieces, each of them have 2 pieces, and with both of them having 2 pieces, it is halves as long as both pieces are the same size, which you can see on all of these examples. They are all the same exact size. So again, this is an example of halves. We're going to move on and take a quiz to see how well you understand halves now.